Welcome to NDSU's Information Program on Moving Expenses. The purpose of this program is to provide a basic overview of NDSU's policies and procedures surrounding the reimbursement of moving expenses to new employees. This program is only intended as an overview of the basics. In this program, we will review the responsibilities of each of the parties involved in employee moving expenses. We'll review expense categories and procedures for processing the transactions. A successful moving expense reimbursement involves a joint effort between the employee, department administration, provost office, human resources payroll, and the accounting office. It is the employee's responsibility to get acquainted with the types of costs eligible for reimbursement, to initiate and confirm NDSU's pre-approval of moving expenses, retain appropriate documentation, and work with the department administration to complete the required documentation forms. Department administration needs to communicate with the employee on the expectations and allowable moving expenses, and also prepare, approve, and submit the appropriate documentation to the NDSU accounting office for reimbursement. The provost office needs to pre-approve or disapprove the moving expenses. This approval indicates the funding source and the total limit of all moving expenses. NDSU's HR payroll department is involved on the front end of the transaction in communicating the moving expense requirements and eligibility. As well as on the back end of the process, after any reimbursements are processed, some of the expenses are considered taxable income to the employee by the IRS. In addition to putting this program together, the NDSU Accounting Office communicates policies and procedures, established reimbursement requirements and audits, and processes the reimbursement to the employee. Moving expense reimbursements are governed by the State Board of Higher Education Policy 806.2, which provides the basis for NDSU Policy 171. Policy 171 can be broken down into three expense categories. Pre-move house hunting expenses, moving personal goods and/or personal travel, temporary living quarters. Each of these expense categories has its own documentation worksheet. Pre-move house hunting expenses are considered taxable income to the employee, according to the IRS. Only employee and spouses are eligible. See board policy definitions if more information is needed. Transportation costs are limited to one round trip. Lodging, which is reimbursed at actual cost, is limited to 3 nights. Meals, which are reimbursed based on an employee meal allowance rate, are limited to 3 days. The costs for transporting the employee's personal goods are not taxable to the employee. In most cases, NDSU's purchasing department should be contacted to obtain discount information, as well as getting approval if the cost is expected to exceed $2,500. Rental vans and other miscellaneous costs are eligible for reimbursement. Expenses related to moving the employee and immediate family are eligible for reimbursement. These expenses are for moving from the old location to the new work location. This includes meals and lodging and one-way transportation to the new work location. Some miscellaneous expenses may also be applicable. Once the employee and immediate family have arrived at the new work location, expenses fall under the temporary living quarters category. All expenses in this category are taxable. These expenses include lodging, meals, and perhaps some appropriate miscellaneous expenses. Employees are eligible for no more than 10 days of expenses total. This includes expenses while en route to the new work location, reimbursable under expense category 2, and while in temporary living quarters, reimbursable under expense category 3. The first part of the process is the pre-approval. The Provost's office must pre-approve the total amount of moving expenses, as well as the funding source. Once the travel is complete, the employee and the department need to work together to complete the moving expense documentation forms. There is one form for each expense category. The employee must sign the documentation forms. The department must approve the expenses on an accounts payable voucher and submit the voucher and all supporting documentation to the NDSU accounting office. The NDSU Accounting Office provides a final audit of the reimbursement, ensuring compliance with board policy and IRS requirements. The final reimbursement to the employee is issued from the Accounting Office. After the reimbursement, any taxable expenses are transferred to the payroll system for tax reporting. Thank you for viewing our program. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact the NDSU Accounting Office.